The first breath morning broke with mist curling over the mountainside, soft tendrils drifting into the courtyards of the Eternal Nexus Sect like ghostly rivers. The sound of the gong rolled through the air again, heavy and resonant, rattling against Liang's bones. He stirred from uneasy dreams, sweat clinging to his temples, the echo of countless branching visions still tangled in his mind. His body screamed from the trials of the day before. Every muscle was sore, his ribs stiff, his hands raw even under their bandages. Rising felt like lifting a mountain with his spine, but to falter now would make Zhaoran's mocking laughter true. He wrapped his hands with slow care, adjusted his robe until it hung straight, and stepped into the cool breath of dawn. The courtyards were alive already, disciples filing toward the courts, the rhythmic shuffle of sandals and the murmur of voices filling the air with a steady hum. Their robes brushed against one another like a tide of blue, neat spirals stitched at each sleeve. Instructor Cai stood waiting, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark robe stark against the pale mist. Today he did not guide them toward the posts or the long squares of stone where they had drilled stances. Instead, he led them across the compound to a circular platform shaded by ancient pines. The platform's surface was carved with spirals that wound in overlapping patterns, etched so deeply they seemed almost alive. The grooves caught the mist, and it coiled along their curves like smoke in a brazier. "Sit," Cai commanded. The disciples obeyed, their movements rustling in unison. Liang lowered himself cross-legged onto the stone, the grooves cold against his skin. He shifted until his posture matched those around him, though unease pricked his spine. Cai's voice cut through the hush like a blade slicing cloth. "Yesterday, you tested your bodies. Today you will begin to test your spirit. Without qi the body is only flesh. Without discipline qi is no more than wild air." He struck his staff against the stone once. The sound resonated strangely, not only heard but felt, vibrating through Liang's ribs and into the spiral carved in his chest. "You will learn to breathe," Cai said, "to sense the current that runs through heaven and earth. Fail and you remain mortal. Succeed and you take your first step onto the path." His gaze swept them all with hawk intensity. "Close your eyes. Inhale slowly. Exhale fully. Feel not only the breath in your lungs, but the world breathing with you." Liang shut his eyes. At first, he felt only the ache of his body. His ribs tugged painfully at each inhale, his palms throbbed from the pressure of resting against the grooves. He heard the scrape of cloth as others adjusted themselves, the nervous swallowing of those unused to stillness. His own thoughts chattered restlessly. But as moments stretched into minutes, the edges of the world softened. The pines whispered faintly overhead. A stream trickled somewhere beyond the walls. The heartbeat of the disciples around him became a rhythm that merged with his own. Beneath it all lay something vaster, a river that ran not through stone or soil but through the fabric of existence itself. The spiral burned faintly in his chest, resonating with that hidden current. His breath caught. For an instant, threads of light uncoiled before his closed eyes, rivers branching infinitely, paths twisting away into distance without end. Possibilities. Consequences. He felt the same crushing weight that had threatened to smother him in the valley, countless futures pressing into his skull. His chest tightened, breath stuttered shallow. The sparrow's whisper slid through his mind like the edge of a feather dipped in frost. Every choice devours the rest. The weight pressed harder, threatening to pull him apart. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to draw in air slowly, forcing his lungs to expand despite the pain. He fixed on a single thread among the endless skein, one river among the flood. He let the others fall away. The spiral steadied. The pressure eased. And then he felt it. A warmth trickling into his chest, faint as the glow of a hidden ember. It was fragile, but it was real. "Qi. Enough." Cai's voice snapped the moment like brittle wood. Liang's eyes opened. The mist still coiled among the pines, yet the world looked sharper, edges glimmering with a life he had not noticed before. Sweat dampened his brow and his chest heaved, but the faint warmth still lingered beneath his ribs. Cai's gaze passed over the circle of disciples. Some stared ahead in dazed awe, their expressions luminous. Others scowled with frustration, as though they had strained against a locked gate. A few smiled faintly, the first taste of something greater glimmering in their eyes. Liang's own gaze flickered across the circle and met Zhao Ran's. The boy's jaw was clenched, his posture rigid, his eyes dark with frustration. His lips twisted, sour with failure. He had tried and found nothing. The sight kindled a small flame of satisfaction in Liang's chest, though he buried it quickly before it could show on his face. "Those of you who touched the current will return here each dawn," Cai said. "Those who did not will remain until they do. No one advances without the breath of heaven in their lungs." His eyes hardened. "Dismissed." The disciples rose, the circle dissolving into shifting lines as they drifted back into the courtyards. Liang lingered, the warmth in his chest still pulsing faintly. It was no longer just theory. He had felt it. The spiral within him might be curse, but it was also connection. His feet carried him toward the library almost without thought. Hunger for knowledge gnawed at him now, sharper than hunger for food. The stooped librarian sat in his place, clouded eyes lifted as Liang approached. "Back already," he rasped. Liang bowed. "I wish to learn more about Qi." The old man's chuckle rasped like dry leaves. "Do you think scrolls will fill your veins faster than breath?" "No. But curiosity is a good hunger." He shuffled to a shelf and pulled a scroll bound in dark cloth, its seal marked with a spiral worn pale by many hands. He pressed it into Liang's grasp. "Foundations of the inner flow. This is where most stumble. Read carefully." Liang bowed again and retreated to a quiet alcove. He unrolled the parchment and traced the characters with his eyes. "Within every disciple lies a sea. Beneath the navel is the dantian, the vessel where Qi gathers and from which it flows. To breathe heaven and earth into the sea is to plant the seed of cultivation. To fail is to choke upon the flood." He pressed a hand to his abdomen. He imagined the ember of warmth settling there, a seed fragile and waiting. Could such a small flicker truly grow into something vast enough to shatter mountains? The thought both terrified and thrilled him. The scroll spoke of channels winding through the body, rivers that must be kept clear, banks that must be strengthened lest the current burst them. It spoke of patience, of breath as both key and lock. Cultivation was not seizing power in an instant. It was shaping the vessel until it could hold the flood without breaking. The words pulled him deep, until the lamps in the library glowed faintly and the windows dimmed to the violet of evening. His body stiffened when at last he set the scroll aside. The librarian gave him no farewell, only a nod that might have been approval or only acknowledgement that Liang had survived the first reading. Twilight spread across the courtyards as Liang walked back to his quarters. Disciples sparred in pairs under the watch of instructors, their movements sharp in torchlight. Others carried buckets of water, others knelt in gardens, tending rows of herbs by hand. The sect moved with quiet purpose, every task feeding into something larger. In his chamber, Liang sat on the narrow bed, exhaustion dragging at his limbs. Yet his breath fell naturally into the rhythm Cai had drilled into them. Inhale slow, exhale steady. The ember stirred again, flickering faintly, refusing to die. He let it glow, imagining it anchoring in his dantian. Sleep crept upon him like fog curling over stone. He slipped into dreams where paths stretched endlessly in every direction. Each step fractured into more, rivers of light and shadow that branched without end. He saw himself striking down enemies, saw himself struck down in turn, saw roads that led to greatness and to ruin. The spiral pulsed with every turn, devouring choice after choice until only one thread remained. Above the rivers perched the silver sparrow. Its feathers shimmered with starlight, Its black eyes gleamed as if they carried secrets older than mountains. It watched him intently. Liang waited for the whisper, for the familiar voice in his skull. None came. The bird only watched, patient, silent. It did not guide, did not warn. Its silence was heavier than any words it had spoken before. Liang reached for a thread of light and saw it flicker into flame. He reached for another and it withered. The sparrow tilted its head but offered no counsel. He clenched his fists in the dream, his pulse echoing with the rhythm of the spiral. If the sparrow would not choose for him, then he would choose for himself. When he woke, dawn's light touched the edge of the window. The ember still glowed in his chest. The sparrow's silence lingered, both unsettling and freeing. For the first time since bearing the mark, Liang felt the smallest spark of ownership over the path ahead.